Good morning, United Kingdom. Good morning. Monday morning, beginning of the week, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Drive time with Lakhi Singh, the property fixer. And today is, as usual, the Wikipedia life story of Lakhi. And obviously, the life story of Lakhi is a way of us tapping into the deeper, darker secrets of Lakhi Singh, what makes him tick, what is the nerve behind the mover, the hoover, the shaker, the acre, the mixer, the robot, the breakdancer of the square mile in London. So do we have Lakhi Singh on this morning yet? Yes, we do. Morning.
Morning, I'm here. But I'm backstage for some reason.
Yes, sir.
They're not letting me in.
Backstage. Yeah.
I'm backstage for some reason. They're not letting me in for some reason.
Yeah. Probably something, got some conspiracy theory against Lakhi Singh taking over central London. So, continuing your life story.
Are you guys going to let me in?
We are
I'm backstage. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
You can hear us? Yeah, we can hear you. Is there a problem? Okay, so send him a text and tell him. You're sending him a WhatsApp. Okay, we can hear you. See, we can see you now, Lakhi. You're on. Can you hear us?
How are you doing? You okay?
You can't hear us? Okay. Yeah, I'm good. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fantastic, apart from slightly puffy black eye.
Okay, yes, you can see that. Domestic issue?
Yeah, for sure, yeah. It's happened in the United Kingdom. Yeah.
The United Kingdom. Excellent. Okay, so we're talking about Lakhi Singh, the life story. We're trying to obviously get into the deeper, darker secrets of Mr. Singh and what makes you tick. So a lot of people's psychology normally comes from their upbringing, from their background, from their struggles, from their history. So obviously, Wikipedia life story of Lakhi Singh. Last week, we went into some very deep, dark, or sensitive areas about relationships and how you handled the relationship, the breakdown of your marriage, and how you were able to control the trauma of that, and what you realized out of that in terms of, was your relationship really as strong as you thought it was, and was it a very fickle relationship, or were the ties very weak? But we saw that as the case is in a lot of financial hardships, relationships do become strained between people, and that strain can lead to a breakdown of communication and relationship, which we all accept. Yours was a similar situation to lots of others that we've come across, but obviously it was the first time for you, so it was very difficult having to break away and be forced into being a part-time father with his children. But nevertheless, you persisted, and now you apparently have a very good relationship with your children, one who's gone to uni and one who's still in, the younger girl who's still in London. So the older, I think, Maluk, and the younger is Isha. So Lakhi Singh, after all those hardships, and you went through the trial and tribulation of being made bankrupt, losing the house, you somewhat fell on your feet again. I think we read that you then decided to take note from the learnings of your experiences and particular matters in insolvency, bankruptcy, the way the system works, LPA receivers and the way the LPA receivers work. And you decided to take all that knowledge and experience, and rather than go back to what could have been considered as a more stable 9-to-5 job, you decided to continue being a businessman, but learning and taking from the knowledge that you had obtained from your difficult experiences. Now tell me, why was that decision? How did that come about? Was that a difficult decision to take about? Having to decide to not go back to 9-to-5, because obviously that would have been the easier route. You had been contracting before, you had a CV, it was quite a strong CV for the city. Was there a tug of war going on between you and your family as to leave business because you've lost everything, you've become insolvent? Even though you weren't insolvent technically, you did have equity, you had assets, but for some reason you were subject to a vengeful bankruptcy. The gentleman wasn't really after getting his money back from you, he was after destroying you. And he thought by making you bankrupt, he was going to destroy you. And in some respects, you could say it was an indirect blessing in disguise, if you want to call it that it put the cat amongst the pigeon in terms of your real relationships. People around you, they were seen for who they were. Were they really friends, or were they foes, or were they wannabes? Were they Mr. Joneses? What were the type of relationships in your personal life that you'd created around you? Were you now being forced to reevaluate those relationships? So what decision did you take? You came to this juncture and you realized that either it's go back to safe 9-to-5. And by the way, safe 9-to-5 in this environment is really doesn't have a meaning because nobody's safe. Had you been in the 9-to-5 now, maybe you would have been in the wrong place in the wrong time. So tell me, what happened then? How did you get, what were the main things you had to struggle with? Were those one of the things that added the stress to the relationship?
Well, I think it was sort of fight and flight mode at the time. But luckily, what I'd done is when I had the bankruptcy, I actually hired the consultancy firm I work for now. They're called RescueMyProperties, to come and help me to salvage what I could. So I started working with them to help me to try and come out of the problem, but soon realized that the type of work we're doing could be turned around and we could be helping a lot of other people going through this similar sort of problem. And from there, that's when the sort of light bulb moment was. We came up with the formula to help people with the negative equity problems, because we realize it's one of the biggest problems in the UK, and haven't really looked back since, because never really considered going back 9-to-5, to be honest. My family actually said I should go back to 9-to-5 because they didn't really understand really what business is about. They thought it was a bit of a joke. A lot of my friends that I had at the time were basically, I sort of drew a line between friends that could probably be more supportive to my, let's say, ex-partner at that time, because I felt that I didn't really need anybody necessarily to be there for me in terms of friendship, although that would have been nice. I felt that the relationship was coming to an end. So I actually let all the old friends continue with their friendships with my ex-partner at the time. And I thought that would probably be better for the kids as well. So they've got a bit more support mechanism around them. So I sort of pretty much let go of my finances. Didn't have a choice in that matter because of the bankruptcy. At the same time, I also let go of all the, keeping up with the Joneses type friends that I had who weren't necessarily supporting me. They were actually taking sides. So I just decided to let it go. I tried to keep in touch with one or two of them that I thought were still long-term friends. But what happened is there was a lot of EastEnders type stuff going on where one or two friends that decided they weren't going to be friends with me anymore for whatever reason. They decided to probably say negative things about me indirectly or directly, and made sure that I wasn't really in communication with anybody anyway. So that's pretty much what happened.
So there was a realignment. So somewhat metaphorically, what happened to you 10, 13 years ago, really, about 13 years ago, was a metaphor for what's happening now in the economy. Could that be correct in saying that?
Yeah, I think this is some ways worse, because at that time, the interest rates mostly impacted the property investor and businesses. It didn't really impact so much the 9-to-5 or employee. But with this particular phenomenon, the impact or the overspill of the pandemic is really into the 9-to-5 person as well, the person that's trying to earn a living. So in some ways, some sectors a lot of sectors, let's say the majority of sectors, are spared in that last recession. But this recession, I think it seems like the property investment side will actually be spared, but the reality, I think, is going to be very different, because as soon as the stamp duty holiday pretty much goes out of the window, I think in June next year, with a lot of people actually not having jobs, and 8 million people on the poverty line, I think this is going to be a lot worse. And hence, I think all the, let's say, trials and tribulations and the scars and the loss of friendships, or the impact of going through a divorce, all those sort of things are really, you could sort of say, things that are come down to experience now, which I can use to help others. So I'm already finding that a lot of people are sort of turning to me because they haven't seen anything like this, so they're turning to me for assistance on to deal with a lot of things which are quite basic now in terms of what happened at that time.
Okay, so what you could say is you've gone through a turbulent whirlwind, really, of experiences in a short time, had to learn lots of new things, really manage relationships which are normally the most sensitive, those which are the most closest, because the impact those type of relationships have on you are far-reaching. Children and a wife, and people you think who are your closest end up being the farthest. You say your family obviously couldn't understand what you were doing, even though you'd lost everything. They thought it was a bit of a joke. Why would you continue in the same business if it's lost you so much? Going through all that trauma and all that turmoil, did you try to seek comfort anywhere? Did you find anybody who gave you that comfort? Were you looking for some support? Did you have, male friends or female friends that you turned to give you that extra support? Was it easy? Because you know, through such trauma, obviously you need some comfort. So how did you manage? Did you have?
Well, my parents were pretty supportive, even though I think they found it quite difficult to understand, and they sort of took sides a little bit, which I think was good in some ways, because it kept my ex-partner at that time sort of connected and feeling good about being at least in communication with my family. So I had a lot of family support. And then also the company that had come in to help me with the restructure of the Lakhi Group at the time. The director of that company, he was very supportive, and he would turn up to my house every day at 6 o'clock in the morning to pick me up. So the pick me up is a little bit of a, you could say, a double entendre, as Rodney would say in and Fools and Horses, double entendre.
Next year, Rodders will be a millionaire.
Yeah, so he actually would come around and pick me up at 6 o'clock every morning, and just made sure that I wasn't wallowing in a self-pity of sorts, and I just made sure that I had a sort of clinical view of what's happening and not get too emotionally caught up with the emotion of all of it.
Were you emotional though, Lakhi?
Sorry?
Were you emotional? Did you have your moments?
Yeah, it was. I can't say it was easy. It's probably it was the toughest thing to go through. I think it takes a long time to sort of deal with that. It's almost like a sort of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So you can't necessarily forget that easily, and in some ways it was a bit of a nightmare that had a massive overspill in every aspect of my life, really. So it's just helped me to reevaluate everything and come to terms with where I really am. But it took a long time to do that, because you had a...
I sense a deep sigh there, Lakhi Singh. Seems like there's still baggage left in there somewhere that needs to be sorted out, because a very deep sigh. So is it still traumatic for you to talk about that? By the way, before we go into further details, John Smith, Ina, Amar Ali, Meena, and we've got Sonia and Sayol Patel, all saying hi this morning, probably deeply listening into your emotional side, Mr. Singh, finding it possibly very touching to know that a successful businessman actually has a human side. Most successful businessmen aren't seen for their human side, and they're seen for their business decisions. I think this Wikipedia life story is allowing you to untap those traumatic feelings that you have. So yeah, you had a deep sigh there, talking about the trauma you went through. So do you feel you've recovered? You talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. Have you recovered, or are you still there?
I'd probably say that they still feel like fresh wounds, even though it was a long time ago. Because just the mere thought of actually not being with your children, or when you're going through a divorce, you're not really. I've heard lots of scare stories of people not being able to see their children for years on end. So I think, to be honest with you, that was probably the most torturous part of all of it. Actually, not knowing whether the court might actually take sides because of the way information was presented. So I think nobody can probably realize how bad that is unless they go through it. And I wouldn't really wish it upon anybody, but I think...
do you think, having gone through that, do you think the court's work to actually help in settling matters between spouses, or do you think they actually don't have a purpose apart from keeping the court system in employment? Because you said they ended up getting the same decision that you'd already taken between you and your wife before she'd been misguided by a handful of miscreants. So is it worth the exercise? Are the courts really doing a justice to settling matters between husband and wife? Is there a purpose? Does it work? It must work for some people.
I think the problem with the court system is, I think they did their job, so to speak, but it's a very clinical system. So you almost feel like it's just the process of going through it is very torturous. But I can understand why it's there, because there are extreme situations that people go through where, a husband or a wife may have done something quite bad, but I think they treat everybody with the same brush, which is the scary part, because if you haven't really done anything, there's nothing really there as a major issue. But we know that the marriage is not working. It doesn't really allow for that sort of thing. They have to try and make it into a big sort of EastEnders plot and make somebody the victim, and it becomes quite unnecessary. So I think I was quite very relieved, actually, once I heard the verdict, that I could continue seeing my children as I'd been pretty much anyway, in the same way. But a lot of the fabrication that occurred leading up to it, saying a lot of things which weren't truths, really. They were just, I would say, lies. That process was quite horrendous, to know, first of all, that you decided to separate on amicable terms, but then a lot of lies get brought in, and that you also know that your ex-partner was not the type of person to lie. So obviously somebody's in the background stoking the fire somewhere, and creating problems, or trying to get their own getting their own foot in the door to try and create a problem unnecessarily, which is fine in some ways, because people do weird things just because they've got some psychological issues. But yeah, the toughest part was not knowing whether what's going to happen with my children, because I think I'm like any parent, you love your kids to bits. You don't ever expect not to be able to see them. And just the mere thought of that is actually even disturbing to this date, to be honest.
Okay, so the question is, do you think you've recovered? Do you still have some anxiety or the feelings of want still? Because I noted there was a deep sigh there. So I was just trying to pick up on the fact, are you still in a state of PDST, or feel you recovered?
I think I've recovered, because I'm quite a sort of a jolly person. So I don't really get things to me. But I'm sure at a subconscious level, it does probably affect me somewhat. I think in some ways, I think having some sort of trauma in your life, you know, I think I was always a very, very sort of optimistic, enthusiastic person. Could never really see a problem with anything. So I think somebody told me at work once, they said, Lakhi, you only got one problem. I said, what's that? They said, you need a healthy dose of skepticism. So I think in some ways, the positive side of it, flip side is that it's probably helped me to become a bit more balanced, a bit more grounded, and to not really probably see everything from rose-tinted glasses, I think, which is probably what I was guilty of thinking everybody is Mr. or Mrs. Nice. So I think it has given me somewhat a healthy dose of skepticism, which is what somebody told me who's actually quite a senior partner in Deloitte now.
Lakhi. So you become skeptical. Well, I assume there was love, being such a loving person, jolly person. There must have been some love on the horizon. It must have been something that carried you through these traumatic years that you had. Because I think your split with your wife took place somewhere around 2010, 11. Is that where you decided to part ways, or was it later than that?
We parted ways around 2012, 2013, I think.
Yeah. So was there anything that you sort of what?
I think 2012, 2013 is when we parted ways. And then I've sort of, how do you say, wanted to sort of settle down and find somebody
there
I could
was
probably
love.
settle down with.
There was love there then. So you were back on the market, as you would say. So there was something happening.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to settle down and get, let's say, married again. So yeah, I've had a few, let's just say, relationships.
Excellent.
Which haven't really, what do you call it, worked. So
okay. And what do you think is the reason? Because a lot of people, I mean, I think Sonia says that she mentioned she had quite an expensive divorce, being very candid about her own situation. Says cost her anything at around 60K for the divorce, a lot of money to spend. And then she said it's also the emotional fallout as well, obviously. So tell me where were you failing? Was it that you were repeating the same mistake? Were you going, I mean, this is a common issue. A lot of people find once they break up or the relationships fall apart, they are somewhat prone to going back into the same type of mindset because they have a particular prototype of the person that they would be attracted to or suit. Were you making the same mistakes again? Were you finding the same type of profile of a partner, Lakhi? Had you learned from the same mistakes? Had you learned from your previous relationship and now were looking for somebody who was totally different or differently placed or oriented? Were you going through the same pattern? Had you broken your profile, or have you continued with the same profile and therefore are looking for that person still?
I think what happens is after marriage, actually, if you're single again, it's kind of weird. I think everybody's quite different, and I think you've got to sort of almost find yourself again before you really can have actually a serious relationship. Because I think you're still traumatized. I think I'm pretty sure I sort of was quite needy after that. So probably jumping into relationships more because you need to be in a relationship, not because it's the right thing to do. So I think it's very difficult to just be normal again as if nothing had happened. You have gone through something quite difficult. It's quite you're emotionally imbalanced.
So being needy, being needy, what does that mean? Was it 30, 40 women a year? How many? What was the number then? What was the head count?
That'd be telling. I can't I can't really say. This is a family show.
Family drive time, yes. Yeah.
Family drive time. So no, joking aside.
60?
Yeah, so by needy, what that means is that I think I'm sort of obviously quite hurt by what's going on. And it took time to actually recover from everything that's happening. And I think I'm probably guilty of actually throwing myself into a couple of relationships, not
like
quite sure.
Knee deep in relationships, you mean?
I wish that were the case.
Okay.
So basically, I basically
into relationships, plural, you say.
Basically, I was trying to probably just have continuity of being in a relationship as nothing really had happened, because trying to literally put everything in the past. But I think the reality is that you're going to look after your well-being, get yourself back up to emotionally. You need to sort of build up your own emotional strength again, and build up your focus, build up your ability to know really what you really want in a relationship that could actually make it work. So the second part of being single again is having, getting to new people, meeting new people. And one thing a good friend of mine told me is that after you've been through a serious breakup, in order to find the right person, you'll need to go through meet at least 2 or 3 people who you get to know pretty well.
Like a bounce back load, you mean? Like a bounce back
load? To realize whether something can work or not. And once you've got a better understanding, really.
What do you mean by physically work? What do you mean like physically work?
Yeah, physically work. It's got to work physically. Yeah. So you got to be
like
physically strong.
Like a bounce back load.
You got to be physically strong, mentally strong, and clear about really who you're aligned with. And I think it's very easy to just fall into a relationship. But so I don't know. It's a very personal thing, I think. So I can't necessarily talk for anybody else, but I think I'm a deeply sort of spiritual person, and very sort of loving person.
Yeah.
And I need somebody who's probably got the same sort of values in the same way. So I don't know. It's a difficult one. I'm not sure if I'm being a man, I can express my emotions so openly.
I sense a feeling of tears being held back there, Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, being emotional there.
Yeah, I've got a hockey ball that hit my eye, so it's probably
so it's more the hockey ball. Yes, yeah. I think a lot of people are probably seeing that and thinking there's been a domestic.
I've got a lot of new members on the alternative property business solutions community, because I asked them for a lot of sympathy. I showed them the picture of my eye. So we picked up about another 40 or 50 members, I think, yesterday.
Out of your eyes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's the trick.
Getting a black eye works. It may be painful,
that's right,
but it basically definitely works in
social
worth
media.
Yeah. Okay. So you've now started to toe dip into new relationships. So what type of relationship? Is it straightforward female or are there mixes there? Are you experimenting with your feelings with different partners, or are you just keeping it very standard?
I don't know what you mean by that question.
I mean, are you having normal relationships? So are you just keeping it normal in terms of girlfriend, boyfriend, we're going out to eat, let's get to know each other? Or is
This
it
meant
a
to
bit
be like an
more?
LGBT type question.
Well, I don't
Is
know,
this
I'm
meant,
asking. It's
are
Wikipedia
you
life
sort of
story.
referring to your own sort of vices?
No, it's not my life story. It's your Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, Wikipedia life story. Wikipedia life story with Lakhi Singh. So the question is, the relationships that you were testing, were they more, we'll go out for food, casual eats, and we'll talk about life and what we like and dislike? Or was it a bit more intimate? That were you experimenting with the idea of what relationships are about? Where were you? Were you in no
I
man's
think
land? Were you
I'm not, to be very honest, I'm sort of obviously trying to deflect the topic, but just to be very clear about it, I'm not, I don't really like to be treating relationships as a joke. So to be serious about it, I think anybody that I'm with or I've set the intention to be with is, for me, looking at it from settling down, getting married to them point of view.
Okay, so you
Otherwise,
were sincere. You weren't
I wouldn't
experimenting. You're
really
saying so.
be
You were
getting
sincere.
into any relationship unless I thought I was going to be serious about it. Otherwise, that's, I don't know, that's not really in my
So what happened
genetics.
then? I mean, okay, so what
It's not in
happened
my
then?
genetics
You were
to
serious.
be. It's not in my
You were
genetics to be
testing,
sort of
experimenting. You were
testing things.
experimenting.
I think
Yeah.
so. If I meet somebody, I would date them, get to know them, and then I would only date them for more than a couple of weeks if I thought that
You
there's
had something
something
there.
long term to come out of it.
So how many of these long terms did you go in for, and did they end up being short term? And what do you think was the learning out of that then?
Well, the
Was this
number is
what
irrelevant
you were
because
expecting?
that's I'm not trying to notch up
Well, just as a
brand.
journalist, I mean, journalism, good,
The
you know.
numbers are irrelevant. The notching up of how many is not really important. I think that's the way I look at things. So the intention was
Okay,
there to meet somebody to settle down with and be serious.
okay. So how were you then tackling the difference between what you thought you were entering into a relationship? So it was obvious they didn't work. And I believe you're not. Are you in a relationship now? Are you now settled and married, or are you still single and looking?
Um, basically, I'm not settled down, and I'm not necessarily looking either. I'm just focusing in on I think my own well-being, on my health, and focusing on basically creating a legacy for my business.
Okay.
So I'm pretty much in a situation where I think when things are meant to happen, they'll happen. And I think if you focus on maybe doing some good things, humanitarian work, and focusing on your passions, then I think life has a wonderful way of bringing everything together for you. So I'm just simply just enjoying life and not. Excuse me. That's probably somebody remembering me. Um, so just simply enjoying life and not really focusing on anything else apart from being successful in me as a person. So
Yeah.
working on humanitarian projects, focusing in on business, helping people to achieve their objectives and goals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually enjoying that and loving that.
Okay, so you've obviously wholeheartedly tried to enter into these dozens of relationships. They're not working. You're finding that the intent that you have of having a sincere relationship with all of the scores of women that you're dating doesn't materialize. So, are you analyzing that? Are you working out if there's something wrong in the way you're approaching dating? Is it not the way it used to be back in the 60s, or has it changed now? What is it?
Well, I'm trying not to follow your example. I'm just trying to follow my own example of what I need to do.
Mm-hmm. So, what was it then that was happening? Then why was it that going through these hordes of women, you weren't finding the reciprocation? Was it that there was a difference in the style? Was it too 60s
I
style?
mean, and I'm saying whatever
Where
thinking you've got
medallion?
about what you think might be going on with hordes of women. I'm just saying that's you're obviously it's a reflection of what's going on with you. So you need to
No,
probably.
no. No, it's just
So,
journalism. I'm just
no,
trying to
it's
get into
fine.
the
So
details of your
let's talk
mentality.
about this. So how did this hordes of women? How did this sort of word start coming into your palate,
It's
into
just like
your
this.
dialogue? The
It
reality
just
is that I have not mentioned anything like that at all.
I gave a general number. I threw that at the crowd. We don't know what the number was, but I assume we said
But I'm just
30
saying
to
it's
60.
if you've had a word that come into your mind, is obviously there's something going on with you. So do you need to talk about it?
No, I'm doing it for the journalistic appreciation, trying to get into the mind of Lakhi Singh and what makes you tick, what makes you who you are and successful as you are today. So you've gone through these experiences. Are you finding that there is a structural problem in the way you're entering relationships? If you're saying you're going in with a mind to be sincere, but they're not working out, is there a structural difference in the way you interpret your understanding of sincere in the way that the females, if they are females, that you're trying to have a relationship with, aren't being the same, or is it the way that are you wrong in the way you're approaching this matter? Is dating for the sake of long-term relationship outdated now? Are people just happy to enter into a very, clinical relationship based upon exchange of values, exchange of ideas, but no spiritual essence? So is that the way it was happening, or do you think it's not what you are now? Are you different in your understanding of relationships? How does it work?
I think it's quite simple. Basically, everybody's different, and I think everybody's got different needs. They've got different values, different roots. So I think you've got to make a choice in terms of what you want. And I'll just reiterate again is that I think it's just important to be very clear about what your values are and what you want. And
And obviously you're saying
but
you're very deeply
it's not a
religious.
must. It's not a
You're deeply
must for.
religious. So
No,
was one of your criteria, being religious, being Sikh? Were you putting that at the forefront of your relationship? Were you looking for a person who is equally religious and who had the true religious values of uh, chastity and all those things that come with good religious values, or was it slightly modified?
well, I think a lot of those, a lot of the values that I have are very much around, um, let's say, spirituality, and somebody who's actually grounded and has got, let's just say, who's probably got a similar sort of passion to I have. But it's very rare to find people who are very similar to yourself that easily. So it just takes time.
Okay, So I think we mentioned it last week, the fact that in relationships, is it not better to have a very clinical way of choosing a partner? Like I think Sonia, we have her on regularly, and we've spoken to her and got comments from her. And she said it's very important to have a partner who has shared values. So is that something that you've not been able to find, shared values, and those values are, they're a bit more materialistically orientated? Doesn't it make it easier for the relationship to work?
I think, well, I agree with Sonia. I think definitely having shared values probably make it easier. But again, I think it takes time for one to be happy within themselves. And all I'm saying is that I'm quite happy just to be. And if the relationships sort of seem to happen, then they'll happen at the right time and the right way.
I mean, Sajal says a positive morning affirmation. Obviously, it's good, positive, that we're talking about deep relationship. Obviously, Sonia is interested to know what makes VJ tick. Yes. Well, I've got deep interest for and behalf of my listeners, the audience, trying to dig deep into the mindset of the property fixer, Lakhi Singh, so that people can understand what it is that makes it a successful person. I think I'm learning one thing, and that is nothing that kills you. Is that the way it said? It said that anything that doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. I think that's all I'm learning is most successful people are very strong in their skills and their mannerisms, and strength comes from the recovery, I think, or the trauma and the repair after trauma, which makes people very strong emotionally and professionally as well. And I think I'm getting that from talking to Lakhi and seeing how he has handled his many varied experiences of relationships, and the hordes of women that he's gone through trying to find the right lady, which is somewhat goes back to a very crude and a very basic requirement and a need for relationships in life. And it makes us realize that you can be as successful as you can be. You still need that human touch. You still need somebody to reach out to you, or for you to reach out to them. In Lakhi's cases, many people, he's a very optimistic, a very happy-go-lucky gentleman. And I think a lot of things revolve around the requirement to be recognized or appreciated. And I think even though we're trying to dig deeper into Lakhi Singh and his experiences, it gives us all a sense of lots of difficult questions, feelings that we may have all experienced once upon a time in our lives, even though we've had less time on the planet than Lakhi Singh. It still is a reference point, and it shows us that humans, man, woman, female, males, they all need appreciation. They all need to be recognized. Even the best and the biggest of us need appreciation. So Lakhi, we've gone on from the breakdown of the marriage. We've seen the traumatic bit. You've spoken about it. I think there's a lot of things there which are still very deep inside you that you're finding difficult to pull out. And it's the meat of what I'm trying to get to, because obviously the purpose of the Lakhi Singh Property Fixer or Wikipedia life story is to try and get in there and touch those nerves, pull out those secret important learnings you've got. Because you said in a number of journals and publishings you had that property is not about bricks and mortar, it's about people. Is that right? Is that where all this experience has come from? From your deep learning of all these relationships you've managed, all these many female relationships you've experienced after the breakdown as well. Is that why you recognize that it's not about property and mortar, it's about people? Were the relationships around you based upon the people and the relationships you had, and in some cases weak relationships? Or was it about property values? Is it really about people, Lakhi? Is that what you've learned from your last 10, 15 years of experiences?
Everything comes down to people at the end of the day in property. So 99% of the problems are not related to property or finances, all based upon the psychology of a person. So I think one of the things we used to say when I started off doing the consulting work in property and business is we used to say to people, you got to put the person before the business. If the person's got some sort of, let's just say, an angle that's actually going to displace the business in some ways, you've got to work on the person, not on the business. So if you've got somebody very experienced, understands the marketing, accounting, business leadership, got excellent management skills, and they're quite well to put together, they've got no real psychological issues, the likelihood of the business success is very high. Then you may have somebody who's not come from a business background, got no accounting experience, no marketing experience, got no sales experience, yet trying to start a multi-million-pound corporation with a fantastic idea. That the chances of success for the latter are going to be very difficult. So they're going to need some sort of mentorship or a business team, or they're going to need to understand really what the gaps are in their business model and their own abilities. So once they understand their gaps and their own abilities, the likelihood of their success increases if they're willing and able to accept what the gaps are in their knowledge and their psychology. Then the success rate of that business is going to go up.
Okay, so we move on now. Obviously, we've got this post marital breakup period, and
I think today's topic wasn't it breakdancing or something?
Well, no, we're going to get to lots of other stuff as well, and that's why we've got Lakhi Singh.
Got a message this morning saying today's topic is about breakdancing.
Pardon?
So I was thinking of practicing my breakdancing moves.
Well, with one black eye, it's going to be a bit difficult for you anyway. So it's probably good for you to take a bit of rest for the couple of weeks until your eye gets better. But anyhow, as we move on, so post marital breakdown trauma, what's happening then in the background then? What are you doing with the business? What's happened now? So have you now decided to realign the business? You've not gone back to the 9 to 5, obviously. People think you're weird. They think you're a bit wacky, wanting to stay in property. But you've got a clever, devious plan there tucked up under the turban. What is that? What did you decide you wanted to do with all the experiences that you've got?
Well, the consultancy I brought in to help me turn around the business at the time, we drew a sketch together. This was literally 13 years ago, of a pie chart, breaking down all the things that we're looking to do. And what the viewers won't necessarily believe now is that exactly what was sketched out, I think this was about literally maybe 12 years ago, is actually literally what we're doing now. And in that pie chart diagram, we had about 6 areas of business. One was IT services.
Okay.
Another one was raising finance, bridging finance. Another one was dealing with debt problems and stopping repossession. Another one was property sales and real estate. And the reality is that all of those things have now come true, and it's almost picture perfect.
It's a bit like you walking on the dog poo at NCR and thinking about when you could be going forward with a job that didn't involve quite as a smelly experience. So is it not somewhat a critical point after that you've come around, draw out a diagram of your future business, and it turns out to be, what is it, nearly true? Is it sort of pitch perfect? Is it 100%? Where are you in that?
I would say it's about 90% as we drew up at the time. And so now it's just a question of scaling it up with the market now in a bit of turmoil. A lot of the services we put together are all about solving a problem in the market. So we're solving the problem of selling property in the market. We're solving the problem of buying property in the market. We're solving the problem of debt problems with repossession and negative equity in the market. We're solving the problem of saving tax in the market, and we're solving the problem of finding an income opportunity that gives you an income with a low cost entry. So it's
all of those things.
I think
and was it a bit the critical point then? Was it like a major turning point where you obviously you must have been slightly confused as to where do you go now? Do you stay in property? Because had you stayed in property as a normal investor or buyer or something, you may have landed up again back in a difficult position. Is that correct, or do you think you would have done it right this time?
Well, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and I think getting in property, I think I would have done by becoming a property investor, by getting lots of properties again. I think I would have been a lot better at it and probably a lot more sophisticated. So I can't say whether I would have been had the same problems or not in this market, but I would have probably had a better chance at it because I've understood the dynamics of property investment a lot better than most people, because I've already learned how to do property investments over many years. So the chances of property investments would have been high anyway, I think, for that reason. But I think going down the route of becoming more of a, let's just say, a property sales company, helping people, on a mass basis, is a lot more exciting. It's a lot more, how do you say, something that's actually a lot more interesting, trying to do something on a mass scale. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, with that, Lakhi Singh, we have to say goodbye this week. Again, the life story of Lakhi Singh, the property fixer. Sonia says that she knew her partner for more than 45 years before they both decided to start on the journey together. Okay, excellent. So next week, Lakhi Singh with the Wikipedia life story. We may get to breakdancing and bhangra, but for now, we're still in the Lakhi Singh business world and talking about his life story. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Take care. See you tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We may have a speaker in. Take care, Lakhi Singh, and take care.